All these things that you cannot change anymore. The other way to be unhappy is to live in the future, because there's all these things you can't control. And unfortunately, I have to say that's the kind of person I am. My mind is usually like in tomorrow, next week, next month. And the only exception to this state of mind, which really defines my character, is when I work. When I work, I'm actually in the moment. I don't have the inspiration or the tendency to look at my phone. I don't worry about Trump. It's pretty good. But it took me a while to really enjoy that moment, because I think there's a similar problem of like present and past when you work as designer or artist. And the first one is that I used to really think constantly about the work I've done before. On my desk I have a mess, and I compared it to some lucky shot I did a month ago or last year, and I compare myself to that. Oh, that was okay, but now this is not working out. Or, on the other hand, that I'm worried that maybe I won't be having the creative energy that I have today in 5 years or in 10 years. And of course, all this work, all this thinking is completely useless, because the only thing that matters is what I do at this very moment. And it only took me like 2 decades of like very privileged and probably rather unoriginal whining and self-introspection to arrive at this moment of happiness. But I guess a few years ago, I finally arrived, and now I can enjoy my work. The only problem is then something happened that disrupted my happiness. And that thing is artificial intelligence. Somebody sent me like the link to ChatGPT, I think 2 years ago, and all of a sudden, all these things where all the smart people I know is like, oh, AI will never be able to do this and to do that. All of a sudden, it's like, fuck. It actually can do that thing, or it might do that thing. And I really think that all of us will be impacted by this. I guess I'm old enough that I don't have to really worry about every single new tendency out there on the internet. But this is something that's so big that I really think we all have to come to grips with it one way or another. And some people I know are enthusiastic about it. Most people I know are skeptical or maybe even afraid, but I think nobody doubts that it will have an impact, at least on the environment that we work in, if not the work that we do. And I think there's ultimately 2 big questions that concern AI and creativity. And the first one is pretty obvious, and it's pretty right, and it's about economics. The question is, will artists be able to make a living in a world where machines can essentially create free art? And if AI makes it more difficult for us to make a living, should we at least have the right to prevent the models to be trained on the work that we're doing? And to that I have to say, I want to create my work, and I know that while I create my analog work or digital handmade work, people will create AI models. And it's fine as long as they keep their stinking fingers off my work. The second question is much more complicated, but I think also much more interesting. And that is the question, what does AI do to the creative process? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? And we all know that, everybody who has spent time with it, making art is really, really hard. And so I understand this idea that you would want to like sit down there, just like press a button, and just like a few seconds later you have a finished artwork. So it's the instinct is totally understandable. Like a few prompts, sit back, ta-da, there's your art, you can go home, have a beer, do something. The problem with that is that I want my art to be original. And the way models work right now is they take a lot of existing data, mix it up, and do a new variation of it, which by default is just a new variation. Now, the thing about that is that most of what the creative industry wants from us is usually a new variation of existing art. And so that is, I think, where the big economic problem comes from, that our livelihood often depended on remixing our own ideas, etc. So far, the systems have not been able to make a true creative leap and really coming up with a new system, because like bringing different thoughts together until now, and this might change any second, has been a human domain. And why is that? I think it's really, whether you're human or a machine, creative work is never an aha moment. It's like 1,000 little decisions, little left, little right. Is the next idea stupid, funny, interesting, boring, red, blue, green? And the machine makes these decisions based on data sets. What's the most likely next decisions? And that, as we've seen with Irene's talk earlier, when she showed all these websites from the museums, the most likely thing is not necessarily the most interesting or good thing for a creative decision. And what's more, I think that data sets like visual culture, like history is full of biases. And AI, instead of working against these biases, it actually amplifies, it makes these biases, stereotypes even stronger. And even if these problems could be solved, I think there's a much bigger problem with AI because it assumes that we as artists know what we want. A prompt, the whole idea of a prompt is that I know what I want from the art that I'm doing, which is, at least in my case, not true. It's like if only it were that simple. I start with like a rough idea of what I want, and then I kind of go there and somewhere like in the dead ends and tunnels, there's like, I have to try to keep this kind of peripheral vision, or not. Most often it does not. And so I want to just bring you through one process of like one month in New York with my family. We got to stay at Nicholas and Louisa's house, and Brooklyn's the most beautiful spot in the world. You look out on the river, and the Hudson Ferry is going by. It was 7 in the morning, and I could not be happier. I was eating tangerines, just enjoying life. Everybody was asleep, perfect moment. And so I'm doodling this. I had this idea, like the Staten Island Ferry for people who have been in New York is orange. So I said, orange, perfect. And I did this doodle actually with my finger on my phone. And I was just like, I'm on vacation, but I know when I come back, I have a perfect idea. So I go back to Berlin, and I sit down, and I make this drawing, and I realize it doesn't work. Because in my head, orange and orange work, but the moment you actually put the shapes together, it just does not really connect. So I kept working, and only when I kind of created an additional shape, the orange in the sky, that's when I realized, okay, there is something visually happening there. Of course, I realized that the Staten Island Ferry is unnecessary. So this whole process of finally like getting rid of the Staten Island Ferry as a central element, it was like 2 weeks of agony. So finally, I feel, okay, this is kind of working. And I have to execute this thing visually. Again, I kind of have a promptable idea in my head, which is like big, strong lines in the front of the window, thin lines in the back. It's gonna be awesome. So I draw this, and it just doesn't work. I don't have any depth in the drawing, and I keep redrawing the background over and over again. And at the end, the solution, again, another 2 weeks, was New Jersey is 4 point, Manhattan 5 point, Staten Island 6.5, and the trees 8 to 10 points. And I think graphic design is worrying about line weights. I do wake up at night and wonder about line weights. This is absolutely true, and I fear I'm actually not the only one in this room. And so eventually, this is the final. And Nicholas and I, we both couldn't be happier that it actually made it to the magazine. And I think the reason why this worked there was no precedent, so I think that I could not have known that this is the idea if I wouldn't have been present for the drawing. And the idea of AI, it excludes you from the moment of drawing, and every important step in the creation came not from thinking, but it came from drawing, redrawing, looking at it, and going over this process like 100 times. The question is, of course, like, what about AI as a tool? And I think every artist has like moments where we are too lazy or too incompetent to do something, and that's when we employ tools. From the moment I had laid my hands on the computer, I can do animations, I can create typography, I can do so many, like flat color by itself. It's impossible with a computer. Every digital tool available I use. I do AR, VR, all these things, and I think it's amazing that the digital world allows us to do that. This is like a stupid example, but this is one of the reasons why I actually sometimes use AI. So for a project, I had to fill the space 2 by 3 meters with circles of random sizes. And I know my Illustrator and Photoshop pretty well, but to my knowledge, there is no command that does that for you. So essentially, the only way to do this, you kind of have to manually draw circles for an afternoon, only to realize it doesn't look good, so you spend another afternoon kind of moving them around. And this is really something where I think AI works. I now use AI to write a script, and the script actually does that thing in like 5 minutes, and I'm really glad I can save that time. I use AI to boost resolution of photos, extend backgrounds, just like unwanted elements in a photograph, or I think it's absolutely fantastic. But overall, in my case, like limitation of a technical way is an inspiration. For me, it's not an obstacle. This is like the moment where I literally have to become creative. But this is my approach of doing art. And I know whether AI is good or bad. May I have a strange echo? Is sound still okay? Okay. This really depends on what you're trying to achieve. This is one of my favorite paintings of all time. Albrecht Altdorfer, The Battle of Alexander. Art historians estimate that there's 5,000 to 10,000 characters in that thing. And for everybody who has ever painted, knows you cannot sketch a thing like that. So before embarking on an entire year of his career doing that thing, he had no idea what he would do. So with AI, he might have actually had done he would have been able to do at least a rough version and known whether it were, I guess it was worth it, but maybe it was not. I mean, me, and I guess a lot of other people out here, I spent days, weeks, months on projects working, wondering, only to realize that there was a huge flaw and all this time a complete waste. And I guess there's a chance that in a few years, people will look back at the way we worked and they will just laugh or cringe. It's like, oh God, this masochism of sitting there worrying whether you wasted your time. Like the same way we think about people in medieval times going to the blacksmith, getting their tooth torn out. Maybe this will all be over soon. I always lied by saying that I do work only for the audience. It's the only thing that matters. And of course, I'm vain. I crave the validation that comes from if people like the art, it's a compliment for the artist. And it's really like part of the biggest weakness in my whole point with AI is that, of course, I want to be recognized as an artist. I want to be recognized as the author of the work that I do. And I think if I use a ruler, if I have an assistant stretch a canvas, or if I use Photoshop, that doesn't diminish my authorship in the work that I do. But it's a sliding scale. So if you think of Proust getting up in the morning and writing in his Madeleine, and then ChatGPTing write a novel about this, and then ChatGPT spits out 3,000 pages of remembrance of lost time, is Proust still the author of that thing, or is it just like an idiot who was hungover eating his breakfast? And this is something that used to be a theoretical thought. Like so many art movements of the last century tried to take the artist out of the creative process, but it was all abstract. And now the question is really does art need an author? Probably my favorite artwork in the world is James Turrell's Meeting in PS1. It's very difficult to describe. Essentially, it's a hole in the ceiling. It's made in a way that you don't really know that you're looking at the sky. You think you look at a projection, but it changes your whole sense of depth, light, room, and it is a metaphysical experience. And I can rarely say this about art. It really changed my life. The question is, would this have been different if this thing would have been created by a machine? You don't see like the hand of the artist. It's just a thing. And what if somebody told me today that this whole experience had nothing to do with an artist? And I think it's impossible to make predictions about art. I don't think about AI. I don't think that AI will bother writing novels or doing oil paintings. I can imagine that it may be an autonomous AI will create pixels and colors in a way they're so perfectly pitched that we will have we start to cry or to laugh or to have a full-blown psychedelic experience. And I can't imagine that this thing will happen. And the question is, of course, when you have such a creative hyperpower, it never gets tired, it just spits out these things all the time. How can I, as a human being, compete? The thing is, I can't. And the only consolation that I have, which is very, very small, is that this is not new. Whoever has done a landscape drawing, there's just this point where you go, why bother? They're like a sunset or mountains or stars, they're so amazing that any drawing that you do is so ridiculously, stupidly abstract that why compete with the sunset? But the thing is it's not about competing with the sunset. This is one of my favorite paintings of Georgia O'Keeffe. Any sunset I've seen is kind of more glorious than that painting. But what makes this painting special to me is that she sat there and tried to take this experience of looking at the sunset and translating it back into abstract colors. And I really think that this idea of taking an emotion and putting it into poetry, into art, into writing, into music is horribly inefficient. But this inefficiency is also what makes it special. When you have like a drawing on a paper bag or a love letter, or yes, sometimes even the painting in a museum, it's special because it's a human, it is a human effort to express, it's like the intent to express an emotion. And I think automating the process of making art is like automating the process of life. Like, you want to get to the finish line faster. Like, this is like a really stupid idea, in my opinion. So in our room, like in my bedroom, I have a few drawings for my kids. And they're typical kids' drawings, like birthday greetings, like stick figures, like typos everywhere. And if our house was on fire, these were the first things I would take. Even though the drawings are the same, like probably a billion other kids' drawings all over the world. If I would have known that my kids would have used AI to enhance or create these drawings, they would be completely worthless. And the sad conclusion is that I think my artistic future depends on my ability to create art that has the same impact as a doodle for the 6-year-old. And I better learn to do this really fast. Thank you.